This third section, or chapter 3, is all about how we can define and build an effectiveness mindset. It slightly touches on some of the previous topics we've addressed, but it goes into a little bit more detail from our panelists. So we're going to talk about what's measured, how we set goals, and how we really get to the heart of that mindset. So I'll start again with Claire, and if you can just talk about your experience, particularly within Lego.
I think with Lego, and I think with a lot of other brands, I think when they think about effectiveness, they think about sales. It's FMCG. Do they deliver on their sales, and did they convert? So it becomes that kind of discussion. And I think that this is moving on, and I think that people are recognizing, and again, in a world, we talked about a very fragmented marketing model, I think people are recognizing that there can be many different KPIs within a campaign, or many different objectives, and the success of something isn't just dependent on sales. And certainly we've shifted within Lego on that mentality, where we have worked very closely with Kantar, for example, and thinking about meaning, difference and salience, and thinking about the long-term health of the brand, because we also know that does have a direct correlation on sales, but other factors as well. So I think it's really about, yes, changing the conversation, the definition of success, looking at different KPIs, and setting that up at the beginning. We talked about what is your objective in the beginning, and defining that very clearly.
And I mean, Lego has gone through this sort of metamorphosis over the last, I suppose, 10 decade or so. And but what sparked the shift between sales and broader brand metrics in Lego? Did you have data?
So I think, again, and I would say this isn't just Lego, I've worked on other big global brands. I think when you understand the power of the brand and the halo that has across everything, and data has allowed brands to measure that. So you can measure the long-term impact even on short-term sales.
Got you.
So I think the power of data and MMM and all these different tools that companies have, that you can see the power of brand building, upper funnel work, that where a lot of the time people and markets wouldn't put money behind this sort of thing because they didn't see a direct correlation with sales. I think that all of these other KPIs, actually we can now measure it and prove it. So strategies are changing.
But when you talk about data, there is a huge amount of data available to us all. So how do you decide what you're measuring? Because we could spend hours and hours and hours working through spreadsheets. So how do you apply the focus? I'm not asking you specifically what you focus on in Lego, but how do you kind of prioritize?
It's all about your objective. So what is it that you're genuinely trying to do, and therefore what are you measuring at the end? So in many cases, it all sets out on what you set out to do in the first place, and what's your objective, what is it you're trying to solve. Be really disciplined on that. Then you set your KPI, and then you measure it.
Yeah. And that, for me, that's one of the things that I really, really like about Effie Worldwide. And the Effies as a series of awards programs around the world, is that there is no single definition of effectiveness. That it is up to the author of each case to propose to the judge, this is what effectiveness is like in this particular context, which comes back to exactly what you were saying there. So it can be any of those things. And a colleague of ours that from Ireland, David Cullen from Opinions, had a beautiful way of articulating that, and I'm sure he won't mind us stealing his intellectual property a little bit. But he talks about a spectrum from softer measures through to harder measures that look at, on the softer end, did our audience think about it? So you look at awareness or equity or consideration, for example. Did they do something as a result? Did they try it? Did they attend something? Did they donate or click or share? And finally, the harder metrics Did they buy it? Now, all of those metrics are important. The point is, which are the most important one for your brand against your consumer in that particular case at any particular given time?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, I agree with you. I love Effie's because I love that flexibility, because there are so many more things than pure sales. And it's also about long term as well and brand building. But do you think that makes judging harder? Is it more difficult to enter? Are you tempted when you enter to just put loads and loads of objectives and results down? How do you feel judges should focus, and how do you feel that the entrants should focus?
I think it's one of the things that makes judging an amazing and interesting experience anyway, because you get to have that conversation out loud with your peers. And one of the highlights of my time at Effie was actually a grand jury in the editorial boardroom at the New York Times, and we were debating two cases, and one had absolutely phenomenal softer metrics, and the other one had phenomenal softer metrics and had delivered sales. Not just sales intent, but it actually had the hard metrics as well, and it covered everything off. And actually the debate between judges just about what was correct was a very, very interesting thing.
Can you tell us what won out?
Yes, I can, if I can remember the name of the brand. It was for a Mother's Day card that you could create online, that was published by a company which I think was part of Hallmark. And they were actually up against the Always Like a Girl campaign, which everybody loved, but didn't quite have the sales results.
Interesting. Thank you. What has really impressed you? I suppose unconventional objectives are always interesting, and a lot of them come from, say, the NGO market or positive change, etc. So can you think of examples of something that's really impressed you as something very unusual or a different type of metric?
I can tell you what I don't like.
Okay.
I don't like it when people will write a case around, look at all the likes we got.
Got you.
Without actually saying, and likes are important because we know it can determine this increase in sales, or this, if you only play in the soft metrics, you better understand what it does to the harder metrics as well.
So that's actually context.
Completely.
Because if that particular entrant had put the context in place as you described, then that's what's very important. Interesting context comes up quite a bit in Euro Effies because it's looking at the different markets. So that's a very important point to make actually to our entrants, that context is really important, because if you're judging something from Romania and you're based in Germany, you won't understand the market context. And we talk about that, sorry.
I think putting all the storytelling principles that we preach in our work to use when you're applying, I think is absolutely, it's the time to really bring all of that expertise to bear.
Absolutely. And Luella, what else in terms of sort of, I suppose, defining or building that cultural mindset in your team?
Yeah.
Is it getting easier, or is it just as difficult as it always was?
I think people are understanding effectiveness more and more. We have a creative effectiveness practice which kind of does a lot of the education and making sure it's always at the top of mind. But also the way we think about it as, this is something that brings teams together. It keeps us focused. It allows us, it unlocks the creativity. It's the kind of attitude towards it that makes it easier to have an effectiveness culture, as opposed to just the process or, the harder stuff.
And I guess having that effectiveness culture within your mindset does mean that you can help fine-tune a brief.
Absolutely.
And so the brief is all important really in this context. So how do you help educate your own clients in that regard? Is there much pushback? Can you push back? Are they open to it?
Yeah, I think clients want to hear feedback about their brief and they want to learn, and it is a discussion. Sometimes it's a matter of just getting clarity. Sometimes it's a matter of building on something that maybe they hadn't thought of, or maybe you hadn't thought of either. So as with most client relationships, it's about having that good communication and setting that expectation that it's not just going to be, we're chucking the brief over, these are all the metrics that need to be achieved. what's the solution, but we're going to have a conversation about that, and that's going to result in a better brief, a greater effectiveness case ultimately.
Yes, absolutely. And that feedback, as you said, meeting somebody over the water cooler or in the kitchen and talking about how the campaign did.
Yes.
That lovely conversation that builds, and with the client as well, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to feel the energy. You want to feel it's real. You don't want to feel like it's work, because this is an amazing job, an amazing thing to do. So when we get our teeth into a really exciting challenge, you want to feel that energy from everyone. And I think sometimes if you don't feel that energy, it can be because the objective isn't clearly defined, or there's too much to achieve. So I guess it's quite an intuitive approach and social approach, but that's what works.
Yeah.
But I think there's also not just at brief. I think there is a really big place when you're coming back with ideas and selling and work to justify choices, like choices that you've made, why you've made, particularly if you're doing innovative, groundbreaking ideas or different channel choices. It's the justification of that. So there should always be this kind of relationship, because how do you sell in an idea to a brand that plays it safe all the time? So again, strategically, data, empirical justification, why this is the right choice. This is the right insight, why, but then this idea, why we believe truly that this is the right thing to do. What choices have we made? Where's the proof? Right the way through.
Yeah, and it's that breaking away from things that are already proven that AI can't do, because it's not got that same, it's not going to measure things in that way. It's not going to take risks in that way. It's not going to bring that intuition, that, that human understanding. So I think, it will be interesting to see how that affects the dynamic of new bold choices made.
You see, I think this is the great conundrum when it comes to creative effectiveness, because you can't prove it's going to be effective until it takes place. And you're asking brands to take a risk. And that risk has no data.
No.
So you can show cases, and there are a ton of cases on our Effie Awards Europe website, and again, all these links will be available for you, which shows where a brand and an agency took a risk and the payback over the long term. But it does require the leap of faith.
There does. I mean, there is some work you can do, like semi-calculated, and because it's not about just making wild. Let's do this.
But, of course.
But I think there is more and more, and I think also the database is really, really good at looking at other examples of people who did it and what they looked into. But I think more and more it's that collaboration, because how do you get clients to buy bold, fresh thinking? And some of the cases that we read, there's some really smart ideas, and you're like, wow, that was a brave client who did that, and look what happened. So it's interesting.
What are the cases that you've particularly been drawn to from the Effie Awards Europe winners last year?
I'm going to go for the mermaid campaign, which was Bayer is the client, and I'm just going to have to refer to my notes. It's actually for a condition called bacterial vaginosis, and the brand, which is called Gyno Canis Balance, is an over-the-counter solution for that. Now that is, without a doubt, a very low-interest category, and one which historically hasn't generated much standout creative. This is an example of where you can take something which creatively raises the bar and drives business results as a result. And I would recommend that people should read that case.
Hey, what's up? How are you? I'm Alexa. I'm a mermaid, obviously, and my tail smells like fish a lot. But that you smell fishy down there, that's a symptom of bacterial vaginosis. So listen, treat it with Gyno Canis Balance, because not all of us are made to smell fishy down there, and you don't have to.
Just 30% of women are aware of bacterial vaginosis, and only 4% seek treatment, hindered by the stigma surrounding the odor. Women with bacterial vaginosis often don't talk about it because they feel ashamed. That's why Caniston, the leader in vaginal healthcare, wanted to help women recognize bacterial vaginosis symptoms so they could treat it immediately on their own without feeling embarrassed. And for that, Caniston brought in the top expert on the subject.
Hi.
A mermaid, a powerful female icon, one who could speak openly about fishy odor. To convey trust, she needed to look entirely authentic. The mermaid's language, cultural references, and direct tone reinforce the message. The result is a brand narrative where fishy odor is recognized as a symptom that should be treated openly and not hidden.
Not all of us are made to smell fishy down there, and you don't have to.
Because we need to overcome the stigma to help women take control of their health. And it can be done with honesty, humor, and beauty. For the first time with Caniston, women got the message loud and clear. They recognized the symptoms of bacterial vaginosis and felt empowered to find a solution by purchasing the Geno Canis balance themselves, establishing the product at the top of OTC products, and helping Caniston to have its best sellout month of its history.
Take care of yourself. Bye.